displays very by the way, my demonstration is going to be mostly on video. I like throwing, actually, but it's really sort of a common way of forming these days in England. Not many potters throws. If you go art colleges, so not many students throws. I think probably 10 years ago, some of the colleges stopped using wheel entirely because just simply nobody wanted. But fortunately, wheel is coming back, and so more young people begin to use wheels. But I don't think it's going to be major forming to. Well, like this. If you have 20 students in England, 1 point, probably 1 or 2 use wheel. Today, probably 3 or 4. That's quite a big comeback. Because of rugby interesting, it will now seems to be this lead called South but throwing couldn't really develop much in modern way. So originally, this is some sort of trade. This is very similar to this one, but this is going to be the dish I call sprung bottom ball. Tomorrow, I'm going to push center downwards. When you see, you understand what it means. But so, don't ask now. Say something called your artistic intuition. Then other is material, awareness of materials. Then third one is process. Material, process, and our mind. Those 3 elements we have to. Those 3 elements can be inspiration to your activity. You can start from anywhere, but probably always certain elements of those 3 have to be in, and much more aware. Now centering is done. Until this point, you work dry. Furthermore. And you don't need to worry too much about going wobbly. Just you center this inside the corner, scraping clay with a finger, like that. So just make this center. And next, outside, you can see it's wobbling a little bit, isn't it? And the simplest thing is you just scrape clay down. It really doesn't matter if you have lots of unevenness here. So just here and here. So when you work here, I put my two elbows like this and form triangle to steady it, and then center like this. And outside, on my thigh, I put hand like this and scrape down. So these 2 points is reasonably center. That's only you need. This point you put slip just outside, and then normal centering. My case, I use like this. And the easiest is you sit away a little bit, and the elbow you hook in front of your pelvis, and you push with your body, not with your arm. That way, your hand is much more steadier, and you can apply much more pressure without using muscle. And this hand just steady. So your case goes the other way around as well. But in fact, that really doesn't matter. Now you put your hand inside and go to bottom corner, and you open inside the bottom against your outside hand. So it may be a good idea if it's not totally centered. Again, you just scrape it and center it. And then against this hand, right at the bottom, you open it. And I call it, you make this bump and groove underneath, like this. Because the inside hand is sliding the bottom, inside hand is slightly higher than outside hand. That difference makes this bump here, and then groove. This groove is important. That's where you hook your clay on the lift. So I clear the wheel head, so you can throw from the right from the bottom. Now, first you use here to lift clay. So you put this into this groove underneath and then lift upwards. But this time you sit very close to wheel head, and you put your back upright and lean forward. And this arm at the side of your body. Centering you put here and push it. But this time side of here, and then your arm towards center but inward. Never throw with here. With here, if you try to lift it, you need an awful lot of muscle power. So like this, so your case like that. Not at the side, like this. And you scoop your clay upward, like this. Now, inside hand is only just making this bump outside. So all lifting you do with the outside hand goes under the clay and lift. It's not side by side, under the clay. You all can do all the time. But when I teach, I ask people to use this way. And so you regulate clay with here, like that, but you touch top with your palm. So like this, not like that. If you do like this, that will scrape clay off. So palm touches top lightly. Then you can regulate. So you can make top even. But this is quite easy to practice. You can artificially make unevenness and just aim high spot. Don't get into lower part. And you repeat a few times, then you can make it even. In fact, this is easier than you think. So you go down to bottom again, and each time you make it clear, you make good bump and groove. That means tip of finger pushes right at the bottom to make this bump and groove underneath, and scrape real head, and start from right at the bottom. This time I use knuckle here, not this, here. That goes into this bump. So this angle is critical. You make it like this. So it goes into there, and you lift clay underneath, scoop up. That makes life easier. And you learn to make this angle as open as possible. More open, less power you need. But unfortunately, more open you make, less stable it's become. So you have to learn to adjust it. Emphasis is press inward rather than lifting. Lifting you do slowly. You pressure inward, and then as you go up, you lift your shoulder like this. You never do like this. If you do that, then this angle changes, so you have to constantly compensate. It becomes difficult. So you slide your arm along side your body, and as you go higher, you lean a bit more forward. So at the top, you're supporting your hand like that. Never like this. Then you need a lot of muscle power to steady. So if you go like this, against your body, you don't need much power to steady. And also, that is good for your body as well. You keep your back upright and then lean forward. Our tendency is we like to sit. So we go like this, and then body goes like this. That's very bad for your back. It's really, so once or twice is okay, but an hour, 2 hours, a day, 2 days, 3 days, you build up stress in your back, and then when probably you're lifting something, you hear it's not. It's not really what you are. You slide like this, stabilizing hand with your body. Then any unevenness comes top, you just. I try once more. So make good hooking point. This method is quite good because you don't need to worry too much about centrings, doesn't it? But funny things happen was when you're learning, even if you start with perfect center, you somehow manage to go off center while you're lifting. But that's an interesting point. You can use that logic the other way around. If you can manage to off-center clay, which started with center. Maybe the other way around should be possible. You can start with off-center and then center while you're drawing. In fact, this method forces you to learn that way.
So what is it?
This is a Maismel. Maismel. Yeah, I know a few Swedes. Because this is just to stop sticking clay together. And you know why I put paper there. So I pushed, so center touches the board. So that means this one have a small flat area at the bottom. That's where it's going to stand. But because this bottom is stretched, if fire, this one standing on a kiln, in fact, they usually sinks. Unfortunately, it never sinks evenly. It goes one way or the other. So what I do is I just make a coil and put those in 4 places. There's a little bit of step here. So I just push 4 and then fire it. And but then, you know, that stopped they going like this. But then interesting thing was, you know, when you glaze fire, you realize that it's supposed to do 5 points, the bottom and 4 pillars. Yeah. But after firing, it comes out, it's supposed to with those 4 posts. Bottom is lifted because the bottom shrinks more. So I realized, in fact, I can leave glaze on at the bottom. Yeah, it's always, you know, when you do something strange, it's always you come up with something more even strange. You know, so it's quite useful. You know, so I have a glazed bottom, which is nice for good tables.
Do you once fire your work?
No, I biscuit fire it. Yeah.
So the green supports are like green clay that you put
Yeah.
each time?
Yeah, I have a sort of special clay, so old English clay called wadding clay.
Yes.
Do you know that? You can buy from Stockholm Trend, very, very cheap. But those clay doesn't go very hard after stoneware firing. It breaks very easily. and you can just clean it, and almost it only leaves very small scars. Good old Simon.
No.
No, I'm okay. Yeah. Just like sort of giving a line, but if you push slightly sideways, something completely magical happens. Isn't that crazy? Amazing? Yeah.
Hörni, ni får lämna upp den där ljuset så jag kan ta en bild här. Ja, där borta. Då är jag sina topplock på mina muggar. Det blir ju. Jag tänkte också på det.
Bravo.
Ligger tänkande. Man får göra många.
Yeah, brilliant. I have an answer for that question now. When anybody asks why, I say, it's just for your entertainment. Oh, coming off. I have a bit less cumbersome method in my workshop. Yeah. I'm just making kinks on wire to make a cut surface a bit interesting.
Det var jävligt snivigt. Jag hoppas tjocken är nere.
With hand making, probably it's much easier to understand what I mean. In fact, this is exactly what I did with this project and lots of other projects. I take exactly the same process, and it's one of the most simplest way and quite good way. So when I was teaching, I often ask the student to learn this method. As far as I know, this is one of the simplest, easiest to learn and very efficient, effective, powerful method for brainstorming. And I'm sure most of you practiced it once or twice or several times. And this is a commonly known terminology, so I use it as well. Brainstorming, that's what you do. But most people probably haven't really learned after brainstorming how to carry out. Once you have done one, don't look into it. Once you've done next one, alternatives. If you make mess, it's okay. Just leave it there. Usually one idea leads to other. So as it flows, you just do it. If the idea stops, just rest for a while. Bending it. This one, line at the top. This one, ridge at the top. And so it's the same handle, but the way the point is bended, it looks quite different. Yeah. That's the sort of things happens actually doing it. Doing it, you begin to notice a slight difference. This kind of subtle difference, you're never able to do it if you're planning on paper. Is this one twisted? So I can twist all those 10 twisted. So that means I have another 10 there. So now I have 40. If you twist this one and that one, it becomes same, yeah? Because it's the same coil. So it doesn't make another one. But then how about twisting this one? Yeah. So I have another 10 here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 50. Am I right? No, it's what already I have said. It's a lot of things comes in, but obviously what you pointed, I pointed like along the coil already. Yeah, I haven't done lines across the coil. Yeah, opposite. Now, say it aloud is vitally important. It's no good you just thinking it. You say it aloud. This is very powerful things. Each time you say it aloud, you hear what you've said. And what you hear comes slightly different to what you thought you said. That's a power of listening, hearing what you've said. In fact, enjoyment of and the power of conversation is like that. I'm sure you experience it. Within the conversation, you say something, and you think, "Oh, that's a silly thing to say." Yeah. Or the other way around, you say something, "Oh, that's very clever." Yeah. Once you do this, soon you'll be rolling to make lines apply all through. So that's new element. So it's really alternative goes a bit wider. Now, let's presume you had 150 handles with across. Now, the third one you do automatically. You just did along and across. So you just check in between, diagonal. Yeah, and you make 200 more. You have 450 now. And you can always come back to this, say it aloud. And the more you do, accurate you become. I have been applying lines with a ruler along, across, diagonal. I have been applying lines with a ruler with this thin edge. How many edges do we have? Thick edge, corners, and the short edge, and you could say this flat as one edge, that flat one edge. Even simple tools like this have. I'm afraid we already passed 1001. Nice handle, good handle, what does it mean? For some of you, it's a fruitless question maybe, but I find it a very interesting question. What does it mean?